talking to book people about books and other stuff.
Hello and welcome to Talking to Book People about books and other stuff. Today I'm going to give a ring to Tara Westover, who wrote this book, Educated. She wrote it 2 years ago. You may have seen it with a totally different cover that now has quotes from the likes of Barack Obama and pretty much every major book reviewer in the world. It was a huge success. It's a memoir. It's about her life growing up as a daughter of a survivalist living out in the hills and plains of Idaho, and then going on to get herself an education despite the fact that her family didn't really believe in institutionalized education or indeed medicine. I'm going to not talk to her particularly about that book because it's been such a huge success for her. She's been touring it for more or less 2 years. So instead, we're just going to talk about everything that's going on right now, see what she's up to, see what she's doing with this lockdown time, and see what she has to say about the world. So let's give her a ring right now. Yeah. So how about you? Where are you seeing it out? Which are you at home, or are you?
I'm not at home. Well, I live in New York. I was supposed to be doing these events in early March, so I was still traveling around in early March, and I had one on the 13th, I think.
Okay.
And I just canceled it. I just said, I can't believe you guys still want to do this. Things are getting a little hairy over here.
Yeah.
And then I left. I went upstate for about a month, and then I came here a couple weeks ago. I'm in North Carolina staying with a friend. There's a lot that's bad about this, and there's a lot that's tragic, and there's a lot of loss, but there are some good things. I mean, some opportunities, I guess. And I feel like, at least for me, I was pretty tyrannized, I think, by email and travel and overscheduled and overcommitted. And so for me, it's actually been really nice to just have everything stop. But I think for, the people that you worry about are obviously people who are in a vulnerable position, either because of their health or economically. It's going to be tough for people. I feel lucky because I'm in a position where I kind of wanted everything to stop, and then it did.
Were you still doing events about Educated, or were you talking more broadly?
It's astonishing, isn't it? I was. And the thing is, I actually like events, and I like meeting people, and I like, I wrote the book because I wanted to talk about these things. I wanted to talk about estrangement, which is a very difficult thing to talk about, but when I was going through it, I felt like nobody was talking about it. So I felt really motivated to go out and talk about it. But I did it for 2 years, and that does I really needed a break, and I wasn't taking one. So for me to just suddenly have everything canceled and have to sit in a field in North Carolina is kind of great.
The government's all trying to figure out how to sort of restructure once we get out of this. And I don't know how, I know that, if you watched Mr. Trump's press conferences, it changed. His sort of position on it seems to change daily as to whether everything's going to be open for business or not.
Actually, don't watch that.
No,
it's a terrible thing to do, but I just don't. I limit my consumption of news, especially political news, the way that I would any other toxic substance. Just not none, but like very, very little. I think news has become very much like clickbait, and news has become something that's trying to provoke a reaction from you. They're not trying to inform you. That's not their goal. It's kind of trying to hijack you in a way. I really do feel like it's trying to get in and make anger and outrage and loathing of other people your primary response. It's just, I find it a little creepy, actually. And you can tell when you sit down to dinner with people who've spent a lot of time reading. There's a lack of nuance or like even a desire to understand people who are different from them that just is gone. Because everything they've been consuming is just designed to kill that instinct. And I'm not a Trump fan. I would never vote for Donald Trump, but I'm from a part of the world where people really like Trump. And I've seen kind of what they've been through for the last 30 or 40 years. And so even though I don't agree with their solution, I think their solution, I just can't understand how Trump's going to help, but I kind of understand why they think that he would be better than the alternative. And anyway, I just find so much of the way that we talk about politics is just so profoundly unhelpful, because rather than trying to understand or importantly persuade people, politics I think should really be about persuasion. If you really believe in an idea, then you should be seeking out as many people who don't agree with you as possible and trying to be convincing. And that is not what we're doing. It's just not even. We mostly seek out people who already agree with us so that we can kind of marinate in our outrage, and that's
I think social media feeds that as well. I think social media feeds that because of the way it you decide what to follow, and you decide who follows you, and then you're like, it's very tribal.
There's the echo chamber effect, but then there's also just the fact that the articles that get shared provoke what they call, an activating emotion. Are the strongest activating emotions are outrage and disgust. And so all the stories that you'll see, especially about people you don't agree with, are going to be stories that have been algorithmically calculated to provoke that response in you. And that's not to say that they're not real. There are repulsive things that you can certainly hear about people, but it's not the whole story. But it feels like the whole story because that's all you're hearing. And I get caught up in it too, which is why, like I said, as with any toxic substance, I just limit the amount of it that I let into my life.
What about books? What have you been reading? Have you had a chance to do some reading?
Yeah, like I said, I think that's one of the more positive effects for me of just having the world stop, is that I have been reading. What have I been reading? I read Alison Bechdel's Fun Home, which I hadn't actually read, the comic memoir. That was obviously really wonderful. I've been reading a lot of either memoirs, which I didn't read before I wrote my memoir. Funny enough, I really didn't read very many memoirs, but I've been reading them now, and I've been reading books that memoirists write after they write memoirs. Because probably more as a like, oh, what do people do after they do this? So I've been reading.
Yeah, go on.
I don't know. I don't have a perfect answer to it yet. I mean, there are people who just write memoirs for the rest of their lives, and that's with varying degrees of success, I think. But some people do it fantastically. I'm a huge fan of David Sedaris, who he's just able to be thoughtful about everything that happens to him and keep his notebooks. And I don't think I'm that person. No. Annoyingly, I don't think that. I think I'm more of a big. I mean, I could try it. I could try, like, what would it be like to just take little things that happen and make them into short stories? I don't know, but I don't have a proven track record on that by any means. So there's that, or people write books about writing, or sometimes they switch into novels. But so I don't know. I'm kind of reading all these books about the memoirists wrote after they wrote their memoir, and kind of figuring out, what happens now.
I'm racking my brain for all the great follow-up books by memoirists that I can think of. I can think of people like Alexandra Fuller. She wrote memoirs of other people as well. She wrote a couple. She did that. She switched into after she had Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight, which was a great early memoir.
Yeah, so I just don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing, and I don't feel a lot of pressure, which is good, in the sense that I think people kind of say, oh, now that you've written this book, now you have to go out and write something just as good or just as big, and I don't feel that at all. I feel like I really just need to entertain myself, and if I can write something else that's useful to people that they want to read, that would be nice, but it's not a requirement.
No, well, I think, and the fact that you've had a book that's been tremendously successful, it means that maybe does it mean that you don't necessarily want another one that's as successful if you potentially have to tour it for 2 more years?
That's an interesting way of thinking about it.
But what I mean is, you've seen it all. It gives you a freedom, maybe, that you can decide, which direction to go in. Whereas, let's say, a debut novelist has a debut novel, it doesn't sell huge amounts, and maybe they're put under pressure by the other people in the industry to deliver something else in a quicker and to build momentum.
I think what you discover is that you imagine that there's a line, that you cross the line, and then people stop bothering you. And I'm here to tell you that there is no line. Right. Like, the second that Educated was successful, people started asking me, what I was going to do next, and how was I going to make it bigger than Educated. And I just reject the premise. I reject the premise that would even be a good thing. Why would you even want that? What would that mean? And I guess I imagine that there would be a level that you get to if you're lucky and you have a successful book, that people are like, well, good job. Now you can just like retire to your country house and enjoy your life. And people do not respond like that. That is not what people respond like. They just double down on the pressure. And it's one of those things that's just really true, that nobody will ever give you permission to just be relaxed and feel good about what you've done. Like, you have to give yourself that permission, because nobody will ever say, okay, well, good job, like you did. And it's true, I feel like at any level, it's true of a debut. They have other pressures on them, because I think building a writing career is so hard that you kind of have to keep going at it. But even if you get lucky and you have a big success, it's not like people are going to back off. Like,
No.
you're going to have to be the one that sets your own expectations and saying, when is enough for me? And I'm going to stop believing that if I only sold this many more books, then I'll be, happy. Like, when am I gonna just say, you know what, I feel good about that, and I'm gonna kind of wait and see what comes up next, rather than really stressing myself out. But yeah, I think it's different if you kind of are building a career, and it's writing is a tricky industry. So I wouldn't tell anybody, don't worry about those things. You should probably worry about them a little, but worry about them on your own terms, and don't worry about them on other people's terms, because those people, that will never go away. Like, you can sell a lot of books, and that will never go away.
No. It's interesting. I talked to Markus Zusak. He came to speak with us when Bridge of Clay was published, and it was interesting talking to him, because he had, he'd gone, I can't remember, I think it was 11 years between The Book Thief and that book. And The Book Thief was this colossal success for him. And it was really interesting talking to him about how he went through different phases. So I think he was in that place that you're describing, where he realized, look, I choose not to accept that pressure that various different elements within the industry, and that could be anyone from a reader to an editor to anybody, to the press, are putting on him, but then just to go for to decide what he wanted to write and the project he really wanted to do. And that happened in his case to be a project that he'd worked on even before The Book Thief, and then he wanted to go back to it and wrangle with it, and it was going to be a big long thing. And that's obviously, if not what certain people around him probably wanted at that time.
No, I had someone seek me out at a book event once. I was giving a talk, and somebody came up to me, and I won't say who it is, because I don't have his permission to tell the story, but he'd won a Nobel Prize, basically. Right. He did a good job.
He did a good job.
And and he kind of came up and just said hi to me, and we were talking a little bit, and then he said, I said, well, what do you regret really from the years after you got the Nobel Prize? What do you regret about the way that you handled it? And he said, I regret being pushed too quickly to get into the next thing. He said, I wish I'd just taken. He's like, I got involved in too many things too quickly. They weren't really what I wanted to do. He said, I wish I'd just kind of taken 5-10 years and just sat with it, and then really threw myself into the right things. I did eventually, but I slowed myself down a lot by just jumping in too early and spreading myself too thin. And I think people have a natural creative rhythm. I mean, there are people who produce books every single year, and that seems like the rhythm for them. Like, that works for them. And then you've got, the Marilyn Robinsons, where, what was there, like 20 years after? I think people have different rhythms, and I wouldn't say, like, it would be better if Marilyn Robinson released a book every year. I have no idea if it would be better. Apparently not. I mean, your books are great, and they take a long time. Exactly. And I don't know, how many books do you need every author to produce? I feel like there shouldn't be that much pressure. You should be able to, if you're lucky enough to be able to support yourself releasing a book every 5 or 10 years, then go nuts and enjoy your life. But or maybe you're one of those people that just like Sedaris, and you're incredibly productive, and that works for you. But I don't think that there's one way to do it. And some books take longer, and some books are shorter, and some people just love to write. I had a conversation with Caitlin Moran, she just loves writing. She loves it the way that I love, like, eating brownies and watching crap TV. Like, she enjoys it. And I like having written, and I enjoy parts of writing, but I do find it really hard, and I have to kind of really want to do what I'm doing to get myself to go through that process. And so, we have very different approaches. People are different, and whatever kind of writer you are, I think the only thing you really have to do is figure out what you are and build your life around that. And don't try to be, like anybody. Who was it that said that the 3 most depressing words in the English language? Have you heard this quote?
No.
I think it might have been Capote who said, the 3 most depressing words in the English language are Joyce Carol Oates, which I always, because she's so productive. Really? And and I don't know how many books she's written, but it's like, it's like 50 or something, you know, she's written a lot of books.
Yeah.
And I think, you have to stop yourself thinking like that.
I think it's 100% right. Yeah, it's 100% right. And but it's a creative industry we're in as well. I think lots of people lose sight of that because it reminds me a bit, sometimes, our industry, the bit that the readers don't necessarily see, and that the bit that it shouldn't be that way. It reminds me of my old job, which was as a lawyer, where it's all about deadlines and structures. So there is a bit of the industry that ideally would like it, you know, rhythmically to be, the books come out at this point, you know, author tours for this long, then we let them go back briefly to sit down and write something else, and then we, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't just mean that just to sort of, I'm not being mean about the publishing side of that, because I understand, but it's just that human nature of liking a rhythm if you're in that kind of job. But that's at odds with the creative. They're totally at odds with the creative side. I think the other thing that the industry is sometimes guilty of as a whole, and even bookshops, is a result of it is that books can have a very short shelf life. So that's the one, you know, the incredible thing about having been able to talk about Educated for 2 years to audiences, is usually even that is actually breaking the mold. You know, that's breaking it because it's had such a tremendous success and people have reacted so well to it. But also it can happen at the other side. You know, everything is geared towards giving a book like a 2-month window, really, to be on tables in shops, to be talked about by a publicity department, to have the energy of publicity running at it. And then if you're savvy as a bookseller, that gives you masses of books that actually did pretty well, but still 90% of the population didn't happen to be there at the right moment when they were being given a push. So you can still sell those books to so many people, you know, and even with a book like Educated, you know, as I mentioned to you on an email, we're still hand selling it all the time, even though it's had such huge success, because you can always find people to introduce a book to.
There's so many wonderful things that have come from the internet, but there's some weird things that have come from the internet. And I think one of them is a homogeneity of culture. And I don't think people, you know, you think about the way Spotify or something works, or Amazon recommendations. It starts out maybe by just seeing what you buy and what you like and recommending you things. But pretty quickly, I think it goes from just reading your tastes to kind of making them. And so you think about the way that a Spotify will recommend music, or that Amazon will recommend books, is that they're kind of algorithmically reading, okay, this book, if we show it to people, a higher percentage of people will buy it than other people. So they know that because our algorithms will tell them that, their data will tell them that. And then what they do is they start recommending that book to everybody because they know it's doing well. Yeah. And it makes sense. You think about it from a business perspective, it's just, obviously that's what you do. But when you're so centralized like that, and it's wonderful if you're the person that gets picked, you know, like you'll sell so many books and everything will be great for you. But what ends up happening though, is that everybody reads the same few books. Yeah. And that's a real homogeneity of culture and of thought that, even though I benefited from that tremendously, you know, thank you. But it's troubling, you know, to think that pretty soon we're all going to be listening to the same artists and reading the same books. And because you'll have basically every year 5 to 10 massive bestsellers that will, you know, go into millions and millions of copies worldwide, and then everybody else will just kind of eat out. It's not good economically for the industry because it's harder for mid-tier writers to make a living, and that's difficult. But it's also, I think, bad for culture to have everybody reading the same books. There's nothing more satisfying than giving somebody the right book that they wouldn't have read, you know. That wasn't, and sometimes that's just because it's an older book. I gave a friend a copy of Sense of an Ending for his 60th birthday, and I just love that book. I mean, it's a big book, and everyone's heard of it. Really won the Man Booker, but it's not, you know, O Quran. It's not like a book of now, and but it's such a beautiful book, and I don't know. I think that there's just that diversity needs to be preserved. It needs to be the case that when you ask your friend what they're reading, it's not the book that you just finished, you know? Yeah.
Listen, last question, and I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of North Carolina.
My quarantine?
Your big party that you're planning tonight. Any new skills you're learning? Any new hobbies you've taken up in this period, apart from getting back to reading and stuff? Are you taking up anything else?
I think I got back into cooking in the way that everybody had to get back into cooking. I'm lucky because I'm staying with my friend in North Carolina, and her husband is actually a chef, a really good chef. I annoyingly turn up in the kitchen around 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and just kind of say, hey, what are you doing there? And he's been super nice, and will say, tell me what he's doing and walk me through it. And I've been learning how to cook properly from someone who really knows what he's doing. I bought some books on bird watching because I kept going for walks and there were all these weird birds. So it's been kind of nice to let go of some of the abstract reading I used to do, where I was constantly reading essays about things far away and irrelevant to me, and not irrelevant, but not as present. And for me, the quarantine's been nice because what I spend a lot of my time reading and learning about now are things that are kind of directly related to what I'm physically doing. Like I want to read about food because I'm making a lot, or I want to read about birds or plants because I'm seeing a lot. And so I don't know, that's been kind of nice to just go back to an approach to self-education that is based on like the physical world that I'm actually in.
Listen, thanks a lot, and stay safe, and we'll catch up with you down the road whenever whatever you decide to write next is out there.
Thank you. You take care, okay?
All right, and you. Thanks. Cheers. Bye.
Please note, no book people were harmed in the making of this film, though some were technologically challenged. All books are available from www.mrbeesemporium.com.